right now in New Zealand, we're fighting against a ban on hunting tahr, but they've got, as their head of their Department of Conservation, their Department of Interior, basically their secretary there. She's a former, anti-hunting lobbyist. It's been her life mission, career mission for 30 years to shut down tahr hunting, return New Zealand to how it was before man arrived there.
Does she realize she would have to leave too for it to get back to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. If we ever get time with her, we can bring that up.
So,
hey, we can all
seriously,
leave.
though, I'm just telling you, that's how far out it can be.
All right, welcome back, Vortex Nation, to the Vortex Nation podcast. Got Jim to my right. We've got Ben Cassidy across from us virtually. Now, Ben is from SCI, Safari Club International, and I guess the tagline says it all: First for Hunters. SCI, First for Hunters. These guys are doing some great stuff for hunter advocacy and really fighting the good fight. I guess against, things that threaten hunting and the hunting heritage and everything that goes along with that. And one thing I think, we're talking about the name SCI, Ben, and the word safari's in there. And I feel like that kind of conjures up, visions of Africa or international only. But that's definitely not what you guys are only about. So real quick here, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, what you have going on, and then let's kind of jump into SCI as a whole and why it's important and why we need an organization like SCI.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks a lot, Mark and Jim, for having me on to talk about Safari Club. It's something that I can speak to endlessly. Feel like I'm the luckiest man alive to be in the job I'm in. But yeah, Ben Cassidy. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Safari Club International. We are a 50-year-old organization, 50,000 members strong, built up off of chapters across the country, across the globe. Like you mentioned, our name Safari Club does conjure up, those giant international, trips. But if you ever make it out to one of our shows, it's the ultimate sportsman's marketplace, and it really shows off, all the corners of the earth that we're involved in. Like we were talking about, and before we got on, our advocacy efforts, it is first for hunters, and hunters are in the field, across the planet. So if there's land out there, we're probably fighting on it. If there's a species that we all enjoy the pursuit of, we're probably involved in, protecting that species and making sure that we still have those opportunities there. So in my role, I oversee our advocacy efforts. Like you said, I'm out of DC. I'm at home right now in Maryland, but we've got our global headquarters here in DC. I oversee our international advocacy efforts, our federal, House and Senate and the administration, our state and local, so all the state capitals from Madison to Sacramento and all over, as well as our legal advocacy, our fight in the courts, which is really, one of our sharpest tools in the shed. So yeah, really fortunate to have an incredible crack team, policy experts, legal experts, wildlife biologists, campaign experts. It's a really cool and unique spot. Before I came over to Safari Club, I spent about 10 years, in hunting policy, working for the National Rifle Association and over at the Department of the Interior under Secretary Zinke and Bernhardt. And I had a really great chance over the years to get to know all the different organizations and all the great work that everyone's doing out there. The one thing that really stood out for me and for Safari Club International was really putting the hunter first. The priority is always the hunter. We can all agree that access is crucial. Healthy land, healthy wildlife is critical. But without a hunter, in the mix, we don't have that North American model that's been so successful and able to give us all the opportunities that we've had and brought species populations to record highs. We're in the golden era right now, and that can really be attributed to that model and to the hunter. So let's celebrate that, and let's make sure that we protect the hunter and keep their place in the cycle. So
very cool. Yeah, you bring up something that's kind of like an interesting, I guess, dichotomy or opposite ends of the spectrum. Like you say, we're in the golden age of hunting, and a lot of wildlife populations are flourishing, and yet probably hunting itself has potentially maybe never been more threatened, in varying ways. And I think, we're seeing some good things, right now. We're seeing increased participation, which is really cool right now. I mean, it's nice to finally see a little bit of an uptick, and hopefully some folks are gonna, recognize, that maybe things, weren't what they were being, as they were being portrayed or, being told, through different channels. But all very, very cool stuff, Ben, for sure. What types of things, you were talking about the legal aspect being like, one of your guys' sharpest tools. Like, what are you guys facing, and what are you, and how are you approaching, I guess, different legal battles that maybe a lot of us don't even know are going on?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for asking. There's a lot to really brag on with our crack legal team. It's led by Jeremy Clares out of South Carolina and Regina Lennox out of New Orleans, that are our in-house counsels. We obviously work closely with a number of really strong allies like Sportsman's Alliance and with NRA. But we are that one group that's in the court fighting for hunters wherever that's needed. We've had some awesome wins just this year alone. Back in January, which seems like it was a decade ago now. That was a different time and place. Big decision out of Louisiana. There was a block on hunting bears. We're not totally in the clear yet, but it was our representation, our challenge of the standing of the anti-hunters that was able to have it pulled back, re-reviewed, and we're going in a direction now where that could open back up, a black bear season in Louisiana. So that's enormous, for having that conservation tool brought back. Now for our membership, constantly under threat, like we're talking about with being a hunter, in what we see as kind of a cancel culture. So we had, Humane Society had a lawsuit trying to do a Freedom of Information Act from the Department of the Interior that would reveal the identity and address and contact information for everyone that's gotten a permit to bring back, their legally harvested animal from overseas. And we moved quickly on our legal team to defend those identities, to challenge that. And not everyone's identity was protected. Some were released, but all of our members that, our legal team walked through the process had their identities protected. I think that that's critical. Just the way we've seen things happen with doxing and all those things. So that was a massive win. Another piece is, the Department of the Interior has moved to granting permits on a case-by-case basis, rather than determining the health of the population, from these wide swaths. It looks at each one and how it contributes to conservation to each animal that would be harvested. We defended that. It makes it much more difficult for anti-hunting groups to do a wholesale ban on certain species. And that was, 7 years of work along with NRA that came to a conclusion in June, where we won in the DC circuit, which has not traditionally been a very, very friendly place. Now, we can get into talking about how the courts have been rearranged and shuffled in more favor of, conservatives. But it was huge to just be able to see a win in such a traditionally hostile place. And, again, that's 7 years. That's a lot of sweat equity, time, and effort, from our team to see such a good result. But yeah, the fight goes on. You get challenges from anti-groups in Alaska, on letting Alaskan Wildlife Management manage their wildlife, the authorities there. We got a challenge where they're trying to ban lead in U.S. Forest Services, in Arizona, not leaving, the casing, with the gut pile. So work on those challenges with our allies at NSSF and NRA. So there's never a lack of opportunity to be in the fight, but it's picking them, really following our membership's wants and needs. We always check with them first, our local chapters. Is this something that would be helpful to the local hunter? We get that green light, we run it up our flagpole, and then we engage. So
awesome. Another thing you mentioned was, working with biologists, right? And I'd be curious because I wasn't aware of this Louisiana, situation where, so the bear hunting, was it actually banned and you overturned that, or there was legislation kind of moving forward that you guys were able to push back?
Not legislation. So it was all, this is again, like examples of what we're doing in the court. So, anti-hunting groups had challenged the legal harvest of black bears in Alaska or in Louisiana, and they effectively shut it down. We challenged the standing that they had, the science that they were using.
Okay.
The court reviewed that and said SCI is in the right, gave us credit, for our challenge, and then overturned the hold that they'd had. So now we are going through the proper review, going through the proper scientific review to be able to get, the black bear season back on, since it's a recovered species.
Gotcha.
What do you guys?
Yeah, so that's cool. I mean, these are like, court cases go on and on and on. We can get into talking about, you guys are Wisconsin, like talking about delisting the wolf and all that, that just, it's delisted, it's back on the list, court challenges forever. So these are, 3 examples of just, and they've taken a lot of time, but they've actually come to fruition over the last, year since I've been on board, which is just incredible and just kind of speaks to, that unique role that that SCI plays in the court.
I'd be curious to know, like, what was the reasoning for, I guess certain groups to be like, no, we shouldn't be able to hunt bears in Louisiana. Like, what was their argument for that?
I mean, I haven't sat in on, their strategy meetings or anything, but the groups
you weren't invited to those?
Not yet.
Weird.
I mean, if I can use this platform, please invite me to the next one. I'd love to discuss it openly. It's their mission. It's to totally shut down all hunting.
Yeah.
Like, facts and science be darned.
Yeah.
Do you guys
that's where they raise their money.
Do you guys find that the biggest challengers that you oppose in things like this are anti-hunting groups, or is it a lot of times that you guys are fighting with just the change of, I don't know, whether it's industry or whether it's just certain things that happen with changing of hands in land, or things that we're doing that are harming an animal population, or is it what's the biggest thing that you guys end up dealing with most often?
Well, I think it's a wide array. I mean, I think that you look at today, right? A lot of people have been removed from the land. A lot of people have been removed from their food source. So it does take, if the onus is on us a lot of the time to explain the role of the hunter, how it is critical, and it is a part of the cycle. So a lot of that's on us. I mean, I remember when I went over, to Interior for the first time, I'd known about it from being at NRA with like Pittman Robertson. You guys know about it because you guys are pumping money into it. But the general population, and even a lot of the folks, that were, at Interior, weren't aware of that role that hunters were playing, and being, and sportsmen and shooters, being, the only ones that were paying into the system for conservation. I mean, so a lot of it is just that court of public opinion, and the onus being on us to be able to explain, our role and our importance. But again, on the other side, I can't downplay, the antis are very well organized and very well funded. They know how to pick a fight and how to stay on the bone and keep after it. So it's on us to be able to fight back and see the fight for what it is.
I just get so curious about anti-hunting groups, because I just wonder to myself, what are they trying to do? I mean, I guess you got examples of anti-gun groups or whatever, where, they're trying to, they say, they're trying to make the, country a safer place or something by just eliminating all guns or whatever. But when I think about hunters and stuff, I'm thinking to myself, they're kind of just out there on their own. It's not like, as an anti-hunter, that you have to be like right next to them when they're out there hunting. I mean, it seems to me as though, how are they even bothering you? And how is it not that, is an anti-hunting group also anti-meat in the grocery store? Or it just baffles me.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's a good question. I think, to simplify it some, I think a lot of it boils down to, like, preservation versus conservation, locking the land up from use or actually have it being used and maintained. I think you find a lot of people in the animal rights, anti-hunting campaign as being more in the preservation, lock it up. Everything should be, a national park and not, that multiple use mandate in a bubble. Totally. I mean, just to kind of go on a total segue off of the continent, right now in New Zealand, we're fighting against a ban on hunting tahr. It's an introduced species. All the big mammals in New Zealand are introduced species. They've created a really big economy off of it over there, with tourism and hunting, whether it's, stag or tahr. Tahr is probably the most hunted over there. But they've got, as their head of their Department of Conservation, their Department of Interior, basically their secretary there. She's a former, anti-hunting lobbyist. It's been her life mission, career mission for 30 years to shut down tahr hunting, return New Zealand to how it was before man arrived there. That is the goal, and it's not really, they don't beat around the bush on it. They like to see it just be green hills and birds again. You start with removing the species.
Does she realize she would have to leave too for it to get back to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. If we ever get time with her, we can bring that up.
So,
hey, we can all
seriously,
leave.
I'm just telling you, that's how far out it can be.
Yeah.
Well, that's different.
You're next.
Right.
It's just different.
Yeah.
Right.
It's different if you live in a giant, smog creating city and you're eating commercially processed everything and, whatever. It's different.
Yeah.
But all right, anyway.
Different.
Yeah, talk about that. That's an interesting one as well. I want to go back to, I don't want to, just stay on bears, but I feel like, and you brought up like the education
You got bears on the mind though. You just went, didn't you just go?
I was bear hunting.
Right.
I didn't get one.
Right.
But that ties into, I guess, this conversation about being an education standpoint and being able to, I guess, talk, I guess, from a educated, somewhat eloquent standpoint to somebody who may not be familiar with hunting. So, we have neighbors on our street. Not all of them hunt. I'd say actually most don't. But we talk and like, oh, what are you doing? Like, oh, I was, going back to Washington to hunt bears with some friends. And they're like, you can hunt bears? Aren't they endangered? It's like, oh no, actually, populations are, definitely flourishing, and like, well, like, that's just like a really there's not very many permits, right? And I'm like, well, actually, it's an over-the-counter tag, and actually, in some states, you can actually take two because populations are, and like they're dumbfounded, and
well, then that's wrong because I feel like it's wrong.
That's wrong because I feel like it's wrong, or I guess what they've been told, or their perception gained over time, right? Is like, oh no, you can't shoot a bear. Those are endangered. It's like, oh, actually, no, they're not endangered. And then like, well, you're not going to eat it, right? It's like, oh no, actually, bears are really good eating, right? And it's not this person's fault. Like, I'm not mad at them, but it's interesting. Like, I feel sometimes as hunters, we forget that a lot of people just don't know the things we know, right? And we can just have a civil conversation with a lot of folks, and hopefully at least you may not turn them into a hunter, but maybe their perception of hunting might change a little bit.
Right. I'm sure your guests have touched on it with just general perception, but we've all seen the polls, at least from SCI, of you got 10% of the population that gets it, they're going to be with you no matter what. 10% that is so against it, you'll never convince them. But everything in the middle, that 80%, those are folks that are going to come at it with an open mind, and they hear it from you and understand how it does play a role and how you do respect the game and everything. I think it goes a long way.
Definitely. I also want to touch on.
Grizzlies came up yesterday in the Senate in the Environment and Public Works Committee. They had a hearing on delisting the grizzly. With a lot of the witnesses that were giving testimony from Wyoming, just talking about the incredible story of recovery and how it should be celebrated. And what better way to celebrate it than by removing it from the threatened list where it shouldn't be any longer under those protections, and return it to, the right folks to manage it, the folks in the state. Shouldn't be the federal government's, problem. So it was a really, really refreshing to hear. We'll see where that goes. But there's been a lot of talk about delisting in the last couple of weeks federally, with that and with the gray wolf, which is exciting.
Yeah. I mean, and all that stuff. It's like we've got these systems and these regulations in place that obviously work, right? Like I said, celebrate it, and it just seems logical. I mean, Jim, I hate to use logic, but
you can't do that. It's unfair.
Bad word.
I hate to use logic in science, but I mean, you can point to, and I could see for like initially, right? You're like, whoa, like we just haven't been able to do this for a long time. Like historically, we haven't been able to do this. Like we've been fighting to get these things back, get them back. And it's weird to like make that shift, I guess, maybe mentally.
Yeah.
And of course, to use a Renault term, I mean, they are charismatic megafauna, right? And so that, that can strike a nerve with certain folks. They do remind folks of the teddy bear they grew up with and cuddled with. And I can tell you, I don't want to cuddle with a grizzly or a brown bear, ever. But yeah, well, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And so you were there listening to that, you said?
I wasn't there in person. It was done with a lot of folks coming in virtually.
Right.
They had one of the witnesses, was out in the field in Wyoming with flies everywhere. Probably just waiting for a bear to walk behind him, but it made it more authentic.
Yeah.
But yeah, just tracking it from home and just following along.
Yep.
That's a lot of, that sort of information is a lot of what our membership is, hungry for and following and trying to be engaged on, see where they can be helpful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like legislation that was being discussed, that we would be very supportive of. We are supportive of, and want to be helpful to those sponsors and getting it passed, because we don't see any other road forward with all the lawsuits for being able to get it done at this point.
How do you guys, the SCI, how do you guys manage how much you have going on internationally? Because I just think to myself, and there are organizations that are solely dedicated to things related to hunting in North America, and I think that you could focus on just our country and continent alone and be super tied up and very busy. And you guys are then adding in all of these other countries and continents and places with different governments and structures and different species, different styles of hunting. In my head, I see it like I think of it as almost kind of fun and challenging. I'd love to learn how different species are flourishing or what challenges they face, or hunters and stuff, and how they do things. But man, that's a doozy to think about.
Yeah, you can think of it as being a doozy, but it's funny, with the more you work in all the different elected bodies, the more you see how much copycatting goes on, So like we're talking about one of the most popular bad ideas out there right now is first focusing on, animal health COVID-19 bills. I totally get that. That's crucial. And that's a very important conversation. But then in there, sneaking in, trophy bans. It's basically, just somebody that hates hunting's legislation, just trying to always get it passed and just trying to put it under the guise, like equating, legal harvesting of an animal and transportation to, a Chinese wet market. We've seen it pop up and we've been beating them back. So like in Brussels, it came up in the parliament. It was their first vote that they ever took virtually. They did it back in April. We're able to kill that by getting talking points out to the parliament there. Have one, that language that's been introduced in the House of Representatives in DC that we've been fighting back on, called the Cecil Act. Just recently, very excited, and brag on the team for this, but we're able to defeat one that was the furthest along in California, in Sacramento, in the California legislature, that would have also been, a trophy ban on importation of species from Africa. That was a full court effort that's gone on for years, but this was the most recent attempt at it. And it was, the governor of California saying, I'm only considering legislation that's related to COVID-19. We have a $40 billion deficit shortfall, so it's got to be tailored to addressing the matter at hand right now. And so they did this COVID-19. They just amended their bill. That was a trophy ban, added some wet market stuff in there, but still at the kernel, it was that trophy ban, and we're able to really work with our partners and our network, of folks in Africa, to be witnesses, to give testimony, to talk about how critical it is for their, local economies, for their livelihood, for their conservation, for making sure that the land remains the way it is so that the animals still thrive on it, for the hunting opportunities. You take that away and they turn it into, farmland that'll never go back to being what it was before. Nothing wrong with farms though, but it would just change. It's again, like the land pays for something, it's gonna stay. So it pays to stay. So having hunting is working for those communities. But being able to get those, working with them, having their voices out there, working on, different, like helping out with crafting op-eds that went out that really showed, the perspective of the game warden in California and how busy they are with just their own issues at home, and then putting the onus of them, basically monitoring what should be illegal, what is illegal activity, making it illegal there, stretching them thinner than they'd already be. It was cool to see all these pieces in place and then them actually being considered and thought of, especially in the most hostile of avenues, in California. I mean, that's a tough place to fight. But a lot of things came into play. Some external factors too got a little crazy, as things do these days. Ended up failing, which was just enormous. But again, like you were going back to how do you work on all the international stuff? It's like there's a template that can be applied everywhere. At the end of the day, you're influencing, somebody's making a vote, get them the facts, let them vote their conscience. Having a template like that in place in California can be exported to, Wellington, New Zealand when it comes up there. So we see all these ideas. I mean, we have a lawyer on staff that works in Brussels. She focuses in on what's going on in the EU, what's going on with international conventions like CITES. So she really keeps us apprised, but she's listening in a lot on our weekly calls to what's going on in America, because ideas like that pop up in California, those get copied in places like Brussels. Things like in Brussels, like they're fighting a lead ban over there. We've seen that, right?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
We've been fighting that. Very familiar. It's not different. I mean, there's different, people in the seats, different people taking the votes, but it's the same issues, the same facts, and it can all be reused and applied elsewhere. So it makes it more manageable that way. We also have, our membership everywhere, pick up the phone at a weird time. Hey, sorry to call you New Zealand. It's, I know, 4 a.m, but does this matter to you? Yes, it's critical. All right, let's work together on it, and leveraging, the boots on the ground there, really focusing on the grassroots piece.
How does a person, so like you guys are, I mean, you're in the trenches with all this stuff, right? Like, I mean, you've mentioned like a bunch of different things. I'm like, I didn't know that was happening. And I'm a hunter. Like I consider myself like a, fairly, I'd say a more than average.
Yeah. You have a smartphone.
Serious hunter. I have a smartphone, Jim. Smartphone. Yeah. Oh boy. I'm not going to get out of that one, am I?
Nope.
No, that's recorded.
I'm going to bribe MC Ryan.
Can't do it.
You don't know.
Anyways, with your farts,
you don't know what I'm capable of. How does a person find out about these things, become aware of them, and I guess help if they want to?
Yeah.
How are you guys even finding out about these things? I mean, it seems like stuff that's like kind of under the radar.
Yeah, you guys got to have like spies everywhere. I mean, you have members everywhere that are really.
I mean, like we have members that are in every freaking corner, and it's the most engaged membership I've ever seen. I say it's 50,000, but it feels like like an army of a million. It's just we have a very horizontal organization with members having a lot of power and influence and reporting back, and us channeling that, through staff means, to have all the eyes and ears. I mean, again, we've got our in-house staff is incredible in monitoring it. And it goes beyond us too. Like a lot of folks see us as a hunting clearinghouse, in the community. So we're always having conversations with all the other, organizations that have that shared interest on the land, and seeing where we can all collaborate. We've signed MOUs where we work, on paper, just saying, committing to how closely we're going to work with, the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation or Ducks Unlimited or the Cattlemen, work closely with groups like the American Conservation Coalition, Campus. It's a group of, college age, maybe 18 to 25-year-old conservation minded activists. So work with them on getting the message out. So a lot of it's, strong membership, strong partnerships, all just kind of working together. I mean, it sounds a little bit cleaner and simpler than it really is. It can get messy, but it's effective.
Do your members go to do they go to events or hearings or whatever to get their inside information that then they relay to you, or are they just on the right news outlet website that pops up every time something comes up and they're like, hey, this is about bears or whatever, this is something that interests me? Or because to Mark's point, I mean, as the casual observer who doesn't have a team of lawyers with me or anything like that, or I guess I just think I wake up in the morning and I come to work, and by the time I get home from work, then it's like, got to make dinner, got to try and find a time to work out, got to try and find time to spend with the wife, got to then go to bed. How do you keep up on that?
I mean, I would just say, I think advocacy, from what we hear back from members, is the number one reason folks join. Obviously, the baseline is I hunt. The second is I want my kids to hunt and their kids to hunt. How do I protect? So I think we've got a membership that is, they're passionate about hunting, but they've also got, second on that list, passionate about protecting it and being engaged and involved. I mean, they've already taken that first step in joining the organization, wanting to get the information, wanting to know where they can be helpful. And then they take that next step. I mean, again, so like we've got, one guy, Cyrus Baird, that oversees our state engagement, for all the capitals and everything. So it's smart on his part where he engages with the chapters that are local. And if we do see like a commission hearing, in Madison, can we get a body there? And the longer you're at the organization, the more like who you can lean on, who can be helpful there. And we got a unique membership where, again, and they're engaged politically, so they'll have their own relationships on the Hill. And no one's pride is going to be hurt, and if no one's pride will be hurt if you get a volunteer that's in Wisconsin that happens to know their legislator better than I do. It's like you speak on behalf of us. It's your organization. We got you the talking points. What we're working on. We've had the discussion. So
cool.
Bring that to them. So
nice.
It's a little decentralized, but it works.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense though. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Do you guys find I feel I'm going to use the word feel. I probably shouldn't use the word feel for this one, but you guys use facts. Like you have facts on your side. You have science on your side. It seems like you're fighting feelings with facts. Is that a lot of what's going on, or is that just an incorrect perception?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's the emotional, and then there's the reality. Again, it's when you go through hearing from those local voices talking about what hunting means to them, what it means to their economy, their livelihood. Those are actual real facts, rather than, the photo that paints the picture. I feel like, it is going with facts. I mean, again, that's why we rely on, having, wildlife biologists in-house, folks that we can always point to, the facts. I'd probably get yelled at by our communications team, but we're rolling out a campaign called Hunt the Facts. So be on the lookout for that. I'm a little ahead of the curve, maybe. I don't know if they've got all the content ready to go, but the facts are all in place. I'll tell you that much.
Nice. The facts are there. They're out there.
The facts are there.
They're in the cloud, Jim.
The cloud.
Not that you can't access from your flip phone.
I can't, probably.
Cool stuff. What's some? Are there any neat things that are going on with SCI that we haven't asked about, or you're excited about?
I just say just really excited about how the summer went for SCI. Everything was changed obviously with COVID. Normally we have a big fly-in where our members come in from all over the country. They fly into DC, and then we go storm the Hill, and everybody's meeting and talking about what matters to us and all the legislation. Obviously that was shut down. So we did a bit of a pivot and did a virtual advocacy week, where we, over the course of the week, kind of we went through the issues that mattered. We had on members of Congress and senators and, elected officials in Europe and Canada, kind of going through what the issues mattered. But then we took the time to drive folks towards engaging in the fight and being a part of it. So like really focused in on promoting and supporting the Great American Outdoors Act, in supporting expansion of hunting and fishing access on wildlife refuges, and then making sure that we didn't see the Cecil Act, the trophy ban bill, come up for a vote. So you normally have, like 120 people, probably come in like real active and go hit the hill. This was 6,000 people over the course of the week engaging. We ended up, having enormous outreach to the Senate and the House on the Great American Outdoors Act. Beginning of August, the first week, President Trump signed that into law. Biggest investment in addressing, all the buildings and blinds and docks that are falling into disrepair, while also guaranteeing, permanent funding for Land Water Conservation Fund. So incredible, monumental, biggest in a generation. Proud to say that, our members really got behind it and really pushed on it to see it through. We had a chance to, be at the White House during the signing and be a part of that, representing sportsmen. So that was amazing. So that was part of the Virtual Advocacy Week. Another one was, let's get involved in the commenting on rulemaking. What rule matters most to sportsmen, and that's opening up more access. So you have the Department of the Interior proposing to expand new opportunities for hunting and fishing by 2.3 million acres. Unbelievable. Let's make sure that happens. Let's make sure that the other team doesn't say, don't do it for this, and that reason, and they end up shrinking it down. So we engaged our members again through that Virtual Advocacy Week to put in their comments, put in their letters, had it all, help them with the language, had it tailored down to, Wisconsin, your specific refuge that's going to be expanded, or Rhode Island, your specific refuges. Had those comments flood in, and the final rule was put in place a couple of weeks ago, and they went through with the 2.3 million, just what our folks had asked for. Unbelievable, awesome. Then we had our membership just flood the box saying, don't bring up the Iconic Species Act, bad for conservation, bad for rural communities in Africa. Don't bring it up. And it hasn't come up for a vote yet. Obviously, there's more days of legislation in this or legislative activity in this Congress, but feeling good about that. Getting through the summer when the other side was in full mode, just pushing on that. That's their centerpiece legislation. It's called the Cecil Act. This is the 5th year anniversary of when they started their campaign on Cecil the lion, but haven't seen a vote come to it. So long-winded things I'm excited about, just what I saw over the summer. Normally you'd see in DC, attention shut down over summer. Everyone goes out on vacation and hits the beach and checks out. And imagine that happens all over the country, but really happens in DC. But with this whole, virtual working and communicating, we're able to stay in front of members, keep the message out there, keep pushing on it, and see real results. And again, we saw the whole community, really jump in, but just very unique in what we're able to do here from SCI with our grassroots platform and, an engaged membership that's smart on the issues and ready to fight.
Very cool, man. If you can back up a sec, because I'd be curious to know, like, what are the bones behind, like, the Cecil Act and the Iconic Species Act? Like, what are those?
Specifically, what's the language?
Or, like, what's the language behind it?
Mission.
Yeah, what's the mission, or what's going on?
Yeah,
there?
I mean, I'd say it's an arbitrary ban on hunting. That's just basically a gift to, Humane Society that gives a lot of money and contributions to the members that introduce it. Cecil Act is a ban on Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe on iconic species. Big five being brought into United States.
Oh, okay, yeah.
For California's, it's 13 species from Africa being imported into California.
Gotcha. And it'd be like basically saying, hey, you can't import these to California, or
if you go hunt.
Yeah,
there.
It would be directing the Fish and Wildlife Service to not issue permits for those. It would tie their hands. And then there's also a play in the appropriations process that would cut funding to issue permits. So at Interior, they would say, we don't have any money that's allowed to be delegated towards this activity. So de facto ban on that. So that's another one that one's still alive.
That's the real tricky stuff you guys got to be looking out for, because I mean, there's the easy to find stuff where it's, oh, somebody says we're trying to ban this, and then there's the sneaky stuff where, well, they're trying to cut this, which would then eliminate that, which would then effectively ban this. I mean, that you got to be really looking. It's like a daisy chain of different cause and effect things happening. That's
when you see
the tap.
Yeah. Totally. That's what it is. Exactly. Just money flowing out of the tap. Just don't turn it off, right? Yeah, I mean, again, it's like Congress is pretty repetitive. When the fights come up a lot of the time, there's an appropriations process, and who the players are that'll introduce it and what the language will look like. I spent a lot of time at NRA. That's one that was just huge target on doing these. They call them appropriations riders, cut funding to prevent this from happening, legislate through a budget. So we're pretty keen to it. And we got a good team that really, combs through it closely, looking for it. And you kind of have a sense. You can go to Humane Society and see, who their top rated endorsed members of Congress are, and probably figure they're earning that rating somehow. So you just follow what they're doing.
Yeah. Is it just like an attempt at a game of attrition or something like that, where you just they're just trying to keep doing the same things over and over in different ways to just wear you down eventually? I mean, is that, because that just seems, it seems like stuff is just popping up all the time, and you got to, after a while, I feel like I don't have the patience to not be tearing my hair out and just thinking like,
yeah, no, I mean, that persistence is key, right? Who's going to blink first? And that's for good legislation, for bad legislation. That's like the Great American Outdoors Act, signed into law. I mean, the beginnings of that is 1985, when Ronald Reagan appoints, a special council to look into how the parks and public lands can be improved. Then at the time was the governor of Tennessee that was overseeing it. He became Senator Lamar Alexander. He championed it for years. It was something that was a no-brainer on the left, a no-brainer on the right, but would always kind of fail under its own weight for whatever political reason. But, as the world turns, we see things through different lenses, different opportunities, and you see it work. So for everything that you got out there, you go at it and you don't take it personally. You keep dating, until it sticks. And you see it with bad legislation, you see it with good legislation. But they're doing their job and we're doing our job to keep shutting it down.
Yep.
There's always different pressure valves, right? I mean, right now you can pass a trophy ban out of the House really easily just on party lines. It just happens to be a platform for the majority. But then in the Senate, you've got, a firewall put up that'll block it as long as they're aware of it, right? Can't assume that they've read through and understood how that would affect hunting, right? An appropriations bill, for example. So it's always kind of just a different table setting and a different way to approach it, but there's always a strategy in place, and there's always allies in good places. We want to make sure that remains.
Yeah.
It goes back to a lot of our unique activity too, is just involvement in elections. We have a political action committee, very involved, with, helping out champions, making sure that they can come back and remain, and trying to be supportive.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think we've even talked about this before, but, and just the language that gets used and probably, and I think this might affect the kind of like that 80% that you were talking about. That's like, oh, I'm not necessarily for, I'm against, I'm a little bit in the middle or somewhat indifferent. And you might ask that person, well, are you against hunting? And they'll be like, oh, no, of course not. I'm not against hunting. Are you against trophy hunting? Oh, yeah, I'm against trophy hunting. But but there's things connected to that just affect general. In fact, it probably mostly affects general hunting. Or, I mean, can you touch on that a little bit? Just like the language that gets used?
I think, that's an electric word. There's no doubt about it. I think if you look at those polls too, it's like 82%. You see the word trophy, like, nope. You say like you eat what you kill, field the fork. Yep, totally in. It's the different ways. I mean, language matters. Ask anyone that's involved in a debate. But that's the misnomer that takes a lot of educating on with a trophy is that it's just you shot it out of pure bloodlust, and then you kept the trophy and you put it up on your wall. There's nothing else to it. There's no money going back to the community. There was no meat going to the community, meat going into your freezer. All of those pieces of the experience and what went into, the conservation aspect. So, I mean, that word is it's a pretty loaded word. Language matters. But it's always on us to kind of just explain what the full experience is, what that full safari is.
Yep. I think that's a tricky one, right? That's a tricky one. And I think there's more to it that oftentimes doesn't get, I guess, revealed, or at least it doesn't get highlighted like it should.
So. You're saying like trophy hunting?
It goes back to you talking about bears and like that line of questioning, right? Where that starts off, why? You don't eat it, right? Those are all just them working through trying to rationalize it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, conservation, tastes delicious, it helps for the health of the population. I mean, that all kind of sways towards the logical, I can't be against that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I just think right now, just that opportunity for the educating side and for, the interest level that's there now. I'm just reading about all this content being eaten up by people, in urban areas about, raising your own chickens, getting your own pig and trying to butcher it for the first time, learning on YouTube. I mean, hunting is right down there. And if we miss on this opportunity in this conversation right now, I don't know. It seems like it's a generational opportunity. And we're seeing it through, new folks wanting to get in the field. Just the numbers alone for, hunter education classes has just been crazy. I can't give you what the number was. We were talking with, New York, and they were just saying how, they broke their year record just for the spring turkey season.
Wow.
I'm excited to see what happens this fall. Again, like we say, earlier on, it's like access is always, number one on the minds of hunters. How do we increase access? But it's not always just physical access, right? It's also access to, how do I do this? This is intimidating, right? So those first steps like hunter ed or having a mentor, I mean, it's on us to take advantage of that right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had a question, I was on the website and I was on your constitutional right to hunt and fish page. And I remember going through hunter ed. So my home state is Washington. And I remember, like, hey, hunting isn't a right. It's a privilege. It can be taken away, which, I guess I don't disagree that if, you make certain decisions, violations, you can have that taken away from you. But maybe explain, can you go through the constitutional right to hunt and fish? And, some states have it, some states don't. Maybe we're working to getting it in certain states. What's going on there?
Yeah, there's been an awesome patchwork of it done state by state. Like you said, it's like if we look at the Second Amendment, that had no intention of hunting in mind when it was put in place, right? So there is an actual wholesale federal protection on hunting. So that's in place, throughout the country in a number of states. I want to say North Carolina was the last state to adopt it. I haven't seen any that are on the table right now being considered. A lot of the times, those can be very useful in land use decisions, so like say in North Carolina, we're really busy there talking with the Wildlife Commission about Sunday hunting. Mm-hmm. So as they go through the process of considering Sunday hunting on state lands where it's currently closed, they won't just meet with sportsmen. They want to talk to everyone that uses the land, right? So it'll be birders, hikers, horseback riders. When you have a constitutional amendment in place saying, this is what the land exists for being used safely by, North Carolina's hunters and visitors, that helps hold up and give you a stronger leg and argument and being able to ensure that that's going to be protected.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. And if it's not, it can be challenged in court using that.
I know where we live, Jim. You can hunt on Sunday.
I'm glad because I have.
Yeah. Again, back to access, one more day, that's more access, right? Especially when it's time off, like you were talking about, Jim, just like, you get home, work out, cook, see your wife some, right? So when else can you hunt? So having the Sunday opportunity is good. But yeah, it's kind of like talk about it with our Western members. They're like, don't get it. Like everybody hunts on Sunday. They're like, but on the East, you get the whole, those blue laws.
Yeah.
Just last year, we overturned the Sunday hunting ban in Pennsylvania. I mean, it's step-by-step process. We peeled it back. So there's 3 Sundays open now for hunting. But, you show that it'll be done safely with respect for all the other use groups and expand from there. So the fight continues there. And like I said, like North Carolina, we're just dug in there. And they passed legislation to do it. And then it takes that, working with the communities to see how to do it right. So we're just working with our colleagues with NSSF and CSF and NRA just to make sure that we get as many Sundays in there as possible.
Is the idea behind the restrictions on Sundays, is it religious based, or is it more of like, hey, you hunters can have it Sunday and then everybody else can, or I'm sorry, Saturday and everybody else can have it Sunday? Or
I think traditionally, when the laws are put in place, that Sunday is the day of rest.
Yeah.
Quiet day. And people want to just have that remain as being a day that's just off limits that way.
Okay, got it.
Obviously, there's ways to do it away from crowded areas where it wouldn't bother a church or a park or anything.
Yeah, I was wondering because I know even around here, and it's it's obviously a big deal up in the north central part of the country. But we have if you hop the border over to Minnesota, you can't buy beer on Sundays, or you can't buy alcohol on Sundays, or whatever. Or at least I know that was a thing. That was a thing when I was in college on the Mississippi River on the Wisconsin side.
Yeah.
I knew a guy that his goal, Jim, was to catch a fish in all 50 states. He was leaving actually Hawaii for the last one, kind of a grand finale. But I can't remember which state he was in. He was in the area to catch a fish in whatever East Coast state it was, but they didn't sell beer on Sunday, so he just drove to the next state.
Get me out of here.
Not worth it. I'm fine with 49.
He took his stand. Anyway, super interesting stuff. Well, and you're talking about like access, and I think we've even brought this up before, even on a previous podcast. But a lot of people only have weekends to hunt.
Yep.
You've got 2 days.
Right. Exactly.
And to cut that in half for a person, and who knows what their work schedule is like. They might work every Saturday and have Sunday off. I mean, that's a significant impact.
And then it's also the bottom line for conservation in that state for like Pennsylvania. Like the hunter in Pennsylvania is not going to be like, well, the law says I can't hunt on Sundays. No, they're going to cross the line and go to Maryland or go to West Virginia. They're going to take their money somewhere else and go contribute there, right?
Right.
Keep it home. That's the same thing with. I mean, we're seeing it now. Little bit of a tangent, but with casinos, it's like just cross the line then, and then the money goes to that state's revenue.
Right. Yeah, that's I hadn't really thought about that aspect to it, but I mean, you're totally right. I mean, that's what I would do. If you told me I could hunt Sunday, I'd jump the border if it was convenient enough, I guess.
Yep.
Well, you go to a state like Montana, and it's not really a problem, right? Because they get it, or Alaska. You don't have to cross the border. You can do it all there.
Man, lots of stuff going on here, Jim. Lots of stuff that I think a lot of folks, probably should be more aware of, and they can, research it. And obviously you can formulate your own opinion, after looking at the facts. But, man, there's just so much stuff that I feel like goes under the radar that, I mean, you guys are, like I said, in the trenches every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I know,
curious
it makes
to me.
like I hear about it and I start kicking myself because I'm thinking, as soon as I hear about some of this stuff, you feel a little bit of passion about it. You think to yourself, I can't believe somebody's trying to do that.
Right.
And I wish I would have known earlier. And then, yet realistically, that kind of stuff is happening all the time. And, you might just hear about one, which we do, usually by the time it's hit a boiling point, you hear about one. You're like, oh, yeah, I'm totally on board with, whatever was going on. Or against what was happening, but then it's kind of too late at that point, and you wish you would have known earlier on.
Yep. That's one thing, and that thing is probably the thing that's in your area, right? Because it affects you and it's local to you. And that's one thing that I thought was really cool, what you were talking about earlier, where you kind of distilled some of those things down as far as like, disseminating information to people and, I guess regionally or by state, being like, hey, this is what's going on for you, right? Because, I mean, selfishly, people are going to care about things that affect them. I think that's, right, wrong. That's probably pretty natural. So I think that's a pretty cool thing that you guys were doing. And a lot of the stuff, it is so
well,
big.
It's like for for you, it's like the land you care the most about is the land that you're using, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's laws that are going to affect the land that you're using, then you're going to be hyper attuned to it.
Yep. Well, and you're just connected to it. You're just, you've seen it, you've been there, you've had experiences there, and you just have more of a connection to the things that you're closer to. And I think it can, I don't know, you can just visualize it better, comprehend things better. Some of this other bigger picture stuff might be, or stuff that's not in your area, or maybe it's in a place you've never seen or had an experience there. It's maybe a little bit more nebulous.
It is, but you can never assume that you're not ever going to come in contact with that, even if it never actually makes it over to your state or your area, which I think a lot of times actually you should be aware of what's happening elsewhere in the country, because like you mentioned, a lot of this stuff gets copycatted across the world, and definitely within, between states. But all the stuff for, with guns in California, for example, it was always just kind of a punchline of a joke over here in Wisconsin, until finally we went on our hunt in Arizona and then had to jump over to California, and we had our firearms with us. And it's kind of, oh, that's right, we actually can't go over there with these. So we got to ship them back now. And then now they're not with us. And now they're, and then you get there and you're all annoyed because it's like, man, what an inconvenience for these 4 days. And then you think, oh, a lot of people live here with this all the time. And I'm annoyed about the 4 days that I'm having to deal with their little rule that I don't like. And
yeah, man.
That's, bad ideas travel faster than good ideas. It's a universal truth. That's like last week we're on the phone. Pretty good. We're on the phone with our members in Chile, and like they're asking about micro stamping laws in California. Like, I know they're all in the Pacific Ocean, but that's pretty far south in Chile, but that idea is down there and they're trying to put it in place. So it's like, all right, buckle up, let's fight it.
Oh, it's funny, but so sad that it's true.
Yes.
I know. You can only laugh. Keep your sanity.
Yep. Well, so for a person that finds like these issues, interesting, they're passionate about it, and they want to get involved, what can they do, or what things can they do to get involved with SCI and what you guys have going on, so maybe they are more aware of these things and can help out?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. First step is obviously joining. I got to put that in there to go to safariclub.org, get involved. I'm part of the national team. We also have our local chapters. So just go to the website, see where those local chapters are, get plugged in with them. Like the updates that I'm giving right now, just done all the time. I serve at the leisure of the members. Just want to be able to keep them engaged, because that's our strength. That's our army. It's like I always tell them, it's when I go in and meet with somebody, in a congressional office, they're not meeting with Ben Cassidy. They see, I'm standing on the shoulders of our 50,000 members. And they want to hear what SCI is saying, because we're in their backyards. So, the way to get involved is just to join up, and have a say in the fight. Other than that, it's vote, most important election in a lifetime. Get out there, make your voice heard. Makes a difference in every level of elections too. Like we were saying, that local decision maker all the way to the president. Just get involved.
Very cool. Very cool. What about social? Can people follow you guys on social and get some of this information as well?
Yep, we are up and live on Insta, Facebook, Twitter. Our Instagram is taking off like wildfire. We've got a good team that's working that and just staying on top of all the issues. So all channels, we're there and pumping info out, to keep folks. That's where you'll see our Hunt the Facts campaign.
All right.
Can't
Say
wait.
it again. Now that I've said it has to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Little sneak peek here.
The onus is on them now.
You are pot committed.
Yes.
We are waiting.
But very cool, man. Well, Ben, appreciate the time and the insight and all the hard work you guys are doing on your end to protect hunting and get the facts out to people. And I think, it's all good things and it's important things, and we appreciate it. So
Yeah.
We wouldn't be doing it if we didn't love it and it wasn't necessary, right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing too. I just always harp on it. Back to like elections, it's like it's a funny community with hunters, right? Where it's like we know when the season starts, we know when it ends, but a lot of hunters forget what day election day is. We don't register to vote, even though we go through all the trouble of these wonky, difficult to navigate. And I'm not throwing any DNRs under the bus, but these, apps to buy licenses, they can be as confusing as anything. More confusing than registering. We still don't register to vote. Hunters just have to be a little bit as passionate about defending it as they are getting in the field, and big things will happen.
I like it. We're using up all our mental bandwidth to just buy that hunting license.
Yeah.
After that, it's just zonked.
I'm exhausted. No, I mean, that's true, man.
That is an excellent point. That is, for sure.
That's true. Make your voice heard. There's ways to do it. Things in place. We can do it together, Jim.
Absolutely. It's a great way to cap it off.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like Mark was saying, Ben, thank you again. And thanks to everybody out there, as usual, for listening. If you have any questions for these guys, I'm sure there's a way that you can get a question out to SCI here, through many, many different avenues, as Ben has mentioned. And, if you have any other suggestions for other episodes you'd want to hear similar to this, let us know as well.
Awesome.
So we will catch everybody on the next episode.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.